If you've ever had a best friend who felt more like an extension of your own body, you know how hard it is to tell them no. It feels like you're hacking away at a piece of your own flesh and memory. Brian and I had been tight since we were 16. We grew up playing sweaty pickup basketball on asphalt courts and skipping class to just hang out on the street corner. In high school, we were always in motion, never spending a single second worrying about where we were going tomorrow. That intense bond from our youth built an unconditional habit of always protecting each other. When you get too used to stepping in to clean up someone else's messes, you stop seeing where the danger line is drawn. But that blind trust is the exact loophole that allows a lethal threat to slip into your peaceful life. As we crossed into adulthood, life started picking sides and pushing the two of us down completely opposite tracks. I chose a safe, predictable, and boring path with a stable desk job downtown. My life cruised along smoothly with bills paid on time and quiet dinners alone in front of the TV. Brian took the opposite road, one full of chaos and uncertainty. He bounced constantly between construction gigs, delivery routes, and bartending shifts, but nothing stuck for more than a few months. He was always chasing shady investment schemes and get-rich-quick promises, slowly sinking deeper into the world of underground debt. He liked the feeling of being completely untethered, but it worried me the way a responsible adult worries about a reckless person. Even though busy schedules and lifestyle gaps meant we saw less of each other, that old loyalty was something I couldn't bring myself to sever. We still grabbed a few late-night beers every now and then, and he remained the only friend who truly knew the real me. Because of that, I was constantly torn between a fierce loyalty to my best friend and the instinct to protect the orderly life I had worked so hard to build. I had absolutely no idea that kindness and loyalty can sometimes be a one-way ticket straight into a bottomless pit with no escape. It all started late one night in mid-September. My phone suddenly buzzed violently against the wooden nightstand at 2 a.m. The screen lit up with Brian's name, a best friend I hadn't seen in weeks. I answered, feeling a mix of irritation and heavy sleepiness. "Hey, can you pick me up right now?" Brian's voice was tight over the line, both exhausted and unusually shaky. "I'm at an abandoned turnout along the highway heading out to the desert. Don't ask questions, just come." "You okay?" I asked back. "Just come get me," he snapped, and the line went dead. I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, staring at the blank screen. My logical brain told me to lay back down and go to sleep because I had an important meeting the next morning. But our history had taught me one thing. When Brian said, "Don't ask questions," he was in deep trouble. I grabbed my hoodie, shoved my car keys into my pocket, and stepped out into the cold night. The highway cutting through the Texas desert at night looked like a perfect set piece for bad things to happen. The surroundings were completely dead, not a single car in sight. With only my headlights cutting through the darkness, I pulled over at the abandoned turnout just as Brian directed, a spot that used to be a dilapidated, torn-down gas station. The only light came from a faint crescent moon and the digital dashboard of my car. From a thick patch of brush by the roadside, a figure stumbled out. It was Brian. He was breathing hard, hair stuck to his forehead, and his face was completely drained of color. His hands were clutching a massive black duffel bag, like it was the only thing keeping him afloat. "Drive!" Brian yelled the second he yanked the door open and threw himself into the passenger seat. I slammed on the gas and sped away before I could even process what was happening. In the cramped space of the cabin, I could clearly hear his teeth chattering from sheer terror. "You hurt?" I glanced over and asked. "No. There's a smear that looks like blood on your sleeve." "It's not mine," he replied in a bone-chilling tone that made my stomach knot. "Brian, what the hell is in that bag, and what are you running from?" I tried to keep my voice steady to press him. He immediately turned his face away, staring straight through the pitch-black windshield in absolute silence. That terrifying silence felt like a solid wall, driving the tension inside the car to its absolute breaking point. At first, I tried to reassure myself that Brian was just overreacting due to his debt panic. I told myself he was just evading aggressive collectors from some illegal casino. "Hey Brian, if it's just about money, we can find a way to settle it or call the police," I said, trying to keep my voice completely flat to ease the suffocating atmosphere. But Brian didn't answer. He just stared blankly at the glowing phone screen on his lap. Suddenly, a dry text alert chimed from his phone. Brian flinched, trembling as he opened the message, and I could clearly see the muscles in his face twitch with terror. They're texting me, he whispered, his voice choking up in his throat. The text read, "You're running at 75 miles per hour on Route 9. In a silver gray Honda Civic, right?" My heart skipped a beat, and my foot unconsciously brushed against the brake pedal. I immediately looked up at the rearview mirror, then glanced at the two side mirrors. The highway behind us was pitch black, completely empty with not a single car in sight. There wasn't a single headlight from a stalker, not a single sign of life. A second text chime rang out, cutting through the roar of the engine. "The driver is wearing a black hoodie, and you're holding that bag way too tight." A cold shiver ran down my spine, making every single hair stand on end. They didn't need to be right behind us, but by some twisted way, they were looking straight inside this cabin. "Turn off the GPS. Turn off all the phones!" Brian screamed frantically, slamming his hand against the dashboard. Panicking, I jerked the wheel, veering sharply into a dark, secluded residential road to try and lose them. Right at that moment, my own personal phone suddenly started buzzing violently. A message from a completely unknown number arrived. I trembling tapped it open, and a wave of pure horror suffocated my chest. It was a photo taken straight at the front door of my own apartment downtown. Accompanying the photo was a short, cold line. "We know where you live. You're not innocent anymore." My only safe living space had now been breached and exposed to the predators. My sense of security completely collapsed, replaced by the brutal reality that I was locked into this game of survival. "They know my place, Brian. They took a picture of my door," I yelled. My hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Brian said nothing. He just cowered in the passenger seat, clutching the black duffel bag like a man who had lost his soul. Knowing I couldn't turn back, I threw my phone straight out the window. Into the darkness, I floored the gas pedal, driving the getaway car down unlit back roads, heading toward a temporary hideout in absolute terror. For the next week, Brian didn't leave my apartment. The thick curtains stayed drawn to keep even a single sliver of outside light from slipping in. The TV stayed off, and every single electronic device was completely unplugged to prevent any tracking. A terrifying silence, an atmosphere of suspicion, and absolute dread replaced every normal interaction between two friends. We barely spoke a single word to each other, except for brief, quick exchanges about food or using the bathroom. That silence pressed heavily on my chest, day in and day out, turning a home that used to be a peaceful sanctuary into a psychological prison. I was trapped in a state of horrific mental torture. Half of me wanted to go to the police station and report the whole truth to save myself, while the other half was torn by a fierce loyalty to protect my best friend's life. Every night I lay perfectly still in bed, but couldn't catch a single wink of sleep. Just hearing the sound of Brian's pacing and stumbling around the living room at 3 a.m. made my heart race, like it was going to burst out of my chest. On the 8th morning, I woke up and walked into the living room. The couch where he had been sleeping was completely empty. Brian had vanished into thin air without a single word of goodbye, taking that mysterious black duffel bag with him. The apartment's front door was still deadbolted from the inside, with absolutely no signs of a break-in or a struggle. He had just evaporated, leaving behind a hollow space that felt bone-chillingly cold. I immediately grabbed a burner phone to dial his number, but I only got a series of long, hopeless rings before being sent straight to voicemail. No texts, no social media posts. It was as if Brian had never existed in this world. About 2 months later, just as the fear was slowly fading like a changing bruise, I found a postcard in my mailbox. The front of the postcard was completely blank. No picture, no return address, just a single postal stamp. But on the back, Brian's uneven, sloppy handwriting stood out clearly. The message was incredibly short and cold, containing just 8 words that made the blood freeze in my veins. "Better you stay away from me. It's safer." The postcard didn't tell me where he was, who he was running from, or whether he was even alive or dead. It only confirmed one single thing. The darkness chasing him hadn't let go, and I absolutely had to stay out of it if I wanted to keep my own life. In the years since, I've had to learn to live with a massive void of information. People like to believe that if you care about someone enough, you can pull them back from wherever they're heading. But the truth is, sometimes their road is already too far gone, and all you can do is watch them disappear around the bend. I kept Brian's postcard deep inside my desk drawer, right under a stack of utility bills and old photos. Every few months, I take it out just to see if it feels any different. It never does. It's like holding a frozen piece of time. It's a reminder that I was pulled into something I didn't understand and barely escaped. Now, the focus of my life is no longer about finding answers to the mystery of that day. I don't care anymore about what was inside that black duffel bag or what Brian actually did to get hunted down. The only thing I have to face is how that event completely rewired my instincts toward the world around me. Every time I hear footsteps behind me on an empty sidewalk or spot a car in my rearview mirror, for too long the old fear comes rushing right back. I never told my parents about this story, and I never told anyone else either. It became my own sealed vault of memory, because I know that opening it means letting the danger spill back into my life. I've realized that Brian is the kind of gravity you never fully escape. Some people we love are storms themselves. They are beautiful, wild, unforgettable, but dangerous to stand too close to. You can care for them from a safe distance, but stepping into their world means losing your own. Sometimes, the ultimate survival instinct of a human being is simply learning to let go before the sky completely breaks open. Friendship and loyalty both have a strict survival boundary that we are not allowed to cross. This story doesn't bring a complete answer to the mystery, but it delivers a bone-chilling lesson. There are some relationships that can only exist when we accept standing from afar. Summer in Phoenix, Arizona is unlike anywhere else. It feels like a massive furnace made of concrete and asphalt. Even long after the sun goes down, the dry heat radiates off the pavement, thick enough to choke you. The night air is dead silent, heavy with the smell of desert dust, keeping my chest constantly tight. My life back then felt like a jammed tape. Every day, I buried my head in circuit boards at a rundown electronics repair shop on the outskirts of town. It was an exhausting, soulless routine repeating itself day after day. Late at night, I would return to my cramped studio apartment, lock the door, and listen to the air conditioner groan all night. Solitude was the only thing I could actually control in my world. But on that night, a vague intuition started gnawing at my mind. It was a shapeless anxiety, as if this thin veneer of peace was about to shatter under some unseen threat. Chloe was always the person who knew how to break that kind of order. We were best friends since college. Even though we were polar opposites, she had this explosive, impulsive energy, always turning herself into the center of attention. I was the cautious one, the person who watched from the edges and calculated every step to stay inside my comfort zone. Chloe lived with no brakes, running headfirst into things like a moth to a flame. She had a knack for dragging me into the crazy messes I always tried to avoid. But a massive rift opened up between us 6 months ago. Chloe suddenly cut off all contact after moving to Miami to live with some rich boyfriend. She vanished without an explanation, leaving behind broken ties and endless unanswered questions. I assumed she had finally found the high life she always wanted. I thought we would never see each other again. My phone suddenly rang at 9 o'clock on a hot Thursday night. The screen showed an unknown number, but when I answered, the voice on the other end was none other than Chloe. Her voice was rushed, a bit choked up, but she was trying to sound forcedly excited. "I'm in Phoenix, right near your place. Come here with me." She desperately begged me to come to an underground art exhibit happening tonight. It was being held in an abandoned warehouse in the old industrial district south of the city. I looked at the unfinished pile of electronic components on my desk, my body already exhausted after a long, late shift. I hesitated and wanted to refuse, just so I could finally lie down in my bed, but Chloe's urgent pleading, mixed with something that sounded like fear in her tone, made me uneasy. I grabbed my car keys off the shelf, opened the door, and walked straight into the stifling desert night. The old industrial warehouse loomed like a massive ghost under the sickly yellow streetlights. The space inside was filled with the chaos of people and music. The air reeked of toxic spray paint mixed with vape smoke. Strips of blood-red neon lights flashed continuously, casting distorted shadows onto the concrete walls. The bass from the massive speakers hammered relentlessly, making my chest vibrate violently with every beat. I found Chloe standing near a secluded corner. She stood out in the crowd in her familiar, vibrant orange leather jacket. But her demeanor was completely stripped of her usual confidence and pride. Her eyes weren't focused on the art at all. Instead, they kept darting around toward the entrances. Both of her hands gripped her phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. When I walked up and touched her shoulder, Chloe jumped like a cornered animal. Before I could even ask how she was doing, The phone screen in her hand lit up again. It was a global real-time location sharing app, and her green tracking dot was blinking continuously. Chloe pulled me close, her breath hot, and hurried against my ear. "He knows where I am. He always knows. I can't hide." Her panicked whisper sent a cold shiver down my spine, despite the sweltering heat inside the warehouse. I followed Chloe's terrified gaze toward the main entrance of the building. Amidst the wildly dancing crowd, there was a tall man standing completely motionless. He wore an ash-gray bomber jacket, both hands shoved into his pockets. He didn't look around to enjoy the exhibit or check out the people around him. His eyes were locked dead onto our position, with a chilling, possessive stare. Chloe accidentally locked eyes with the man in the gray bomber jacket, her face instantly drained of all color. Her body froze for a split second before she gripped my wrist painfully tight. "He found me. Run now." Before I could even process what was happening, Chloe yanked me forward with incredible force. We shoved violently through the chaotic crowd, dancing wildly under the blood-red neon lights. I had to use my elbows to push past unfamiliar shoulders to clear a path. Chloe led me rushing out through a dull, gray side emergency exit in the corner. The heavy iron door burst open, throwing us straight into a dark, musty alley behind the warehouse. The heat of the Phoenix desert night hit my face, bone-dry and suffocating. We had only run a few meters when an engine roared from the end of the alley. A glossy black SUV suddenly surged out of the darkness at a terrifying speed. The tires screeched horribly on the rough dust as it slammed on the brakes, blocking our entire exit to the main street. The car's headlights blinded us, shining directly into our eyes, forcing us to squint. The car door swung open. The man in the gray bomber jacket stepped down from the cabin. He approached us with slow, casual steps, as if he were just taking a walk in a park. He stared intently at Chloe and called her name in a deep, warm voice that was terrifyingly controlling and cold. "Did you turn off your location, Chloe? Didn't I tell you not to do that?" His soft questions made the air around us turn to ice, freezing every nerve in my body. My survival instinct suddenly kicked in, overriding the fear. I shoved Chloe into a narrow, dark passageway between two brick walls separating adjacent warehouse lots. Instantly, I clearly heard his heavy footsteps speed up behind us, starting a direct pursuit. The thudding of his shoes on the gravel echoed rapidly, closing in right behind my back. We ran for our lives in the dense darkness, not daring to look back even once. My lungs burned from inhaling the dry, hot, dusty Phoenix air. After a few minutes of frantic fleeing, we burst onto a major street with streetlights. I dragged Chloe and rushed into a 24-hour fast food diner across the street, glowing bright under fluorescent lights. The warmth and the smell of grease inside the diner did nothing to stop my shaking. We chose to slide into a hidden booth at the very back, nesting behind the plastic dividers. I looked down at my hands, shaking uncontrollably against the old Formica tabletop. A wave of pure horror hit me as I realized I was no longer just a bystander. The psycho out there had looked straight at me, engraving my face into his memory back in that alley. I was officially dragged into Chloe's deadly circle of danger. Chloe sat across from me in the hidden corner of the fast food diner. Her shoulders shaking violently under her leather jacket, she burst into tears, her smudged makeup running down her face. Through her choked-up sobs, Chloe finally confessed the entire truth about that terrifying man. "His name is Evan, my ex-boyfriend from when I was in Miami." She told me that at first Evan appeared to be a perfect gentleman, wealthy and always pampering her completely. But that sweetness quickly turned into a nightmare when he revealed his true nature as an extreme control freak. Evan forced Chloe to install a location-sharing app on her phone so he could monitor her every single second. When the relationship became too suffocating, Chloe found a way to bypass the hardware location tracking and secretly packed her things to escape from Miami. But the influence of that madman was far beyond anything she could imagine. Evan went completely frantic trying to find her, using money and a dense network of private investigators to stalk her across multiple states, from the East Coast all the way to this West Coast desert. I sat there frozen, a wave of shock washing down my spine as I listened to the story. I realized I wasn't just helping a long-lost friend. I was facing a highly sophisticated personal threat. He possessed the technology, the money, and the psychopathic patience of a madman, something that couldn't be handled with normal logic. The daily routine of Phoenix outside the diner's window continued peacefully. But my world had completely turned upside down. That night, I secretly brought Chloe back to hide in my cramped studio apartment. The only private space where I used to feel safe had now become a suffocating and tense temporary shelter. The presence of the invisible threat gnawed at us through the smallest signs every single day. Chloe never dared to turn on the living room lights, constantly nesting by the window slit to watch every car parking down the street. She would jump in panic at any small noise coming from the apartment hallway. Chloe's travel backpack was always placed right next to the entrance door, carefully zipped so she could run at any moment. The psychological torture quickly bled into my own life. On the fourth night, Chloe's phone kept buzzing in the dark with streams of messages from anonymous numbers. The peak of the horror came when a message arrived with a wide-angle photo attached. It was a picture taken dead-on of my studio apartment window, shot from a high floor of the building directly opposite us that very night. He had found this place. He was right out there, staring straight at us. A fierce psychological warfare exploded inside my mind. I was violently torn between my loyalty to protect my best friend and the sheer terror for my own life. I realized I was completely helpless and had no safe solution to escape this invisible gun barrel. On the sixth night, my endurance completely hit rock bottom after days of continuous insomnia. The heavy psychological pressure drained the last bit of strength from my body. I fell into a deep, exhausted sleep right on the cold floor. When I woke up the next morning, the studio apartment was buried in a bone-chilling silence. The sofa was completely empty. All of Chloe's belongings, luggage, and jacket had vanished without a trace. The only thing she left behind was a yellow sticky note hastily pasted. Her shaky handwriting appeared deeply haunting. "He is down in the lobby. If I don't leave, he will kill you too. You're safer without me." My heart stopped for a few seconds. Then I rushed like crazy to the balcony to look down at the sweltering morning road of the Phoenix desert. Everything was completely deserted. There was no sign of Chloe, nor was there any glossy black SUV parked there. I had absolutely no chance to intervene, left only with a profound sense of helplessness before an open ending. More than 2 years have passed since that day. I still haven't received any news from Chloe. I had to move to another state, change my phone number, and always completely lock down all location features on all my personal devices. But the old psychological ghost has never let me go. Every time my phone rings from a blocked, unknown number, I let it go straight to voicemail. Because if it really is her, I'm not sure I'm ready to hear which version of the truth. The story closes with my flat, cold monologue about the grim realization of survival. Sometimes loyalty means standing beside your friends no matter what. But there are moments when the danger they carry can spill over onto you, and the bravest thing you can do for them and for yourself is to step back. You can care deeply for someone and still choose to protect your own life. It's not abandonment. It's survival. The air out at the abandoned Salton Sea is always suffocating. Thick with the chemical stench of decay, rows of rusted, empty trailers stand in perfect alignment, creating an eerie, unnatural sense of order. The sharp tang of salt mixes with the heavy smell of dried fish, hanging in the air like a calculated warning. The wind howling through loose, corrugated metal sheets sounds exactly like people whistling back and forth in the dark. I am a guy who just went through a devastating bankruptcy. I carry a heavy weight of shame and guilt after completely wiping out my family's life savings. My natural instinct is always to avoid conflict. I prefer the quiet, isolating myself from society, just so I do not have to face reality. That is the only reason I agreed to this long road trip with Beckett. Beckett was my best friend from college. He wanted me to tag along, thinking it would give me a chance to clear my head. My role throughout the entire trip was completely passive. I just sat quietly in the passenger seat, taking notes on the desolate landscapes passing us by. As the car turned onto the dirt road leading to the desolate beach, the eccentric guy at the last gas station stopped us to give a warning. He handed us a bottle of water and strictly told us in a gruff voice never to stop the car or talk to anyone around the southern shore camp. Do not stop under any circumstances, and don't breathe a single word to anyone around the southern shore camp. "You hear me," he growled bluntly. His warning sounded like practical safety advice, but his restless, terrified eyes showed that a dark secret was being hidden. Beckett's SUV suddenly died right in the middle of the abandoned plaza, and thick black smoke began pouring out from under the hood. Both of our phones completely lost signal. making it impossible to call for roadside assistance in this isolated space. Walking into a dilapidated tourist management office to look for help, I accidentally found an old dust-covered walkie-talkie sitting on a table. The walkie-talkie suddenly let out a violent burst of static and erupted with the raspy voice of a local man. The guy in the gray shirt is looking right at the radio, and the guy you're with is standing frozen by that broken car in the yard. Right? The man whispered eerily through the crackling static. That man was reading out the exact color of the gray shirt I was wearing, Beckett's posture, and the broken condition of the car outside. I tried to use common logic to convince myself that this was just a sick prank by some local hunters watching us with binoculars from a distance. I started to feel like I completely lost control of my surroundings as the desert darkness began to swallow the entire ruined plaza. The old walkie-talkie on the table suddenly let out another ear-piercing burst of static. This time, it was a second man's voice, much deeper and colder than the first one. "Everything is going exactly according to plan. The prey has taken the bait. Get ready to close in," he commanded through the interference. That vague but deadly piece of information made my entire body go cold. My mind immediately raced back to the terrifying rumors of a brutal human hunting ring that had been causing mysterious disappearances around this dead Salton Sea for years. However, I still didn't dare to take any drastic action because I had no weapon or concrete proof in my hands. Outside in the yard, Beckett was still pretending to tinker around, trying to fix the engine block that reeked of black smoke under the wide-open hood. Suddenly, the distinct sound of footsteps crunching over the dried fish carcasses began to echo rhythmically. The sound was coming from multiple directions, surrounding the rusted mobile homes. I realized that our initial practical solution of fixing the car to escape had completely failed. When I rushed outside and leaned down to look into the engine bay, I was horrified to find that the entire main wiring harness of the SUV had been cleanly cut with specialized pliers. My suspicion and fear peaked as I looked up at Beckett. He didn't show even a hint of surprise or panic at the fact that his own car had been severely vandalized. Beckett just stood frozen in the desert darkness, his face completely flat and expressionless, his eyes glued to his wristwatch as if he were counting down the time. The bone-chilling cold of the desert night, combined with the absolute isolation in this dead zone, was pushing my mental distress to a suffocating level. I walked straight toward Beckett, holding the cleanly cut wires out in front of his face and demanding an honest explanation. "Beckett, what the hell is this? Why did you cut the car wires?" I screamed, both hands shaking violently from anger and fear. Right at that moment, the rusted loudspeaker system hanging on the light pole of the abandoned plaza suddenly switched on, blaring the crackling melodies of a chilling funeral march. This bizarre detail instantly confirmed that we had fallen into a trap, and this hunt had been meticulously planned from the very beginning. Beckett didn't show even a shred of panic or embarrassment in the face of my blunt accusation. He just stood frozen in the darkness, slowly lowering the hood, before letting out a completely resigned, cold smile. Beckett's phone screen suddenly flared to life in the pitch black, displaying an old text message from an unsaved, unknown number. I glanced through the car window and read the spine-chilling text. "Bring him to the exact meeting point at Salton Sea, and your entire debt will be wiped clean. Beckett, why are you doing this to me? What was our 10-year friendship even worth?" I choked out, my heart aching as if sliced by a knife. Beckett looked me dead in the eye, dropping a cold denial in a voice that belonged to a total stranger. "I never considered you a friend. It was always just about the money." Fast as lightning, he snatched the only key from the ignition, opened the door to step outside, and slammed it shut, locking me tight inside the immobilized SUV. The very second, Beckett's silhouette vanished into the desert darkness. Frantic, heavy footsteps, crunching over dried fish carcasses, echoed from all directions. The predators who had been lurking this whole time immediately rushed out, completely swarming the car and violently pounding their hands against the glass windows. I was lucky to escape with my life that night by quickly using the emergency axe to smash the rear window glass. I crawled out, leaving all my luggage behind, and ran for my life through the toxic, foul-smelling salt flats all night. The thick desert darkness shielded me from the relentless search of that brutal group. Months have passed, but my mind is still heavily haunted by the crackle of the walkie-talkie and Beckett's cold, betraying face. I tried to report the incident and look for information from the local police. However, the investigators told me that Beckett and his SUV had completely vanished without leaving a single trace. Now I have moved to a remote, secluded town in the snowy mountains of Montana to escape my past. Late one afternoon, while walking past a roadside thrift shop, I suddenly froze because of something on a glass shelf. I saw a rusted, dust-covered walkie-talkie with the exact same model and color as the one from the Salton Sea years ago. That walkie-talkie, which did not even have any batteries in it, suddenly let out that familiar, ear-piercing static. The prey has changed locations. Everyone get into position. That terrifyingly raspy voice from the past echoed coldly once again. My entire body froze solid in the bone-chilling cold of the Montana mountains as the brutal truth hit me. The real danger does not lie in desolate places. It lies within the very people standing right around us. The final warning reminds you never to let your guard down when facing prohibitions or suspicious silence in this life.